find a place that is boundless and wide, where we walk with angels side by side. A place of smiles and happy tears, where our hearts are open and there are no more fears. A place where love is seen on every face and arms are open wide to embrace. A place where everyone measures the same, where you are true. Are explored, where truth is accepted and never ignored. A place where those of old age are wide-eyed and still learning, when time seems to rewind and to youth we are returning.
Good morning, everyone. Happy Sunday to you. Happy Sunday to you. This is Cornerstone, and I am Tony Sawyer. Glad to have you with us this morning. Hope you're doing well. I am trying to get myself together here and apologize if I was a little late today. Let's see who's here with me today. Let's go up. Let's see. Hey, Sister Pearl. I got Sister Pearl text me or send me a message. I can't find your number. My phone is losing contact. So can you send me a call, give me a call, or text me or something so I can get that number? And hey, Jill, how are you? Hey, Brother Kessler. Hey, Sandra. How are you? And Marcine, it's good to have you guys here with us. Sister Sharon's here. Hey, Brother Blue and the family. Thank you, Brother Blue, for all the calls and the love gifts, and thank you for the prayers. Thank you, guys. Hey, Bernie. And then there's Kathy. Hey, Kathy. Sister Chris. Sister Chris, how are you this morning? There's Dee Dee and George. Dee Dee and George is coming in. And there's my sissy. My sissy's upstairs listening to us. She's right here with me. She's been helping me with pastors for the last few days, who had his surgery on last week and is recovering and moving a little bit slow, but he's coming. And let's see. Let me cut my banner off. Let me cut this off. I did not pull an affirmation, but I wanted to start off with something this morning. Something that I remember, and I think you guys may remember it with me because this happened quite some time back. There was a young lady on America's Got Talent. It's been several years back. She had been burned in I think it was an airplane crash. She had been severely burned and left scarred, and was on there. She was there to compete, to sing, actually a singer, and a very good singer at that. And her standing on the stage in that condition was really moving to everyone that was watching her, because of the courage that she had to stand there with the scars and not let that push her back, not let that stop her from pursuing what she wanted to do. Most people who have that would have had that condition, would have had that kind of devastation, would hide or shun being around people and shun being especially in front of the public. But she was just the opposite. And when I saw her, I was so inspired by her that I wrote this: tragedy and crisis exposes the potential strength of the human spirit, or the weakness of the human ego. When there's suffering, it's either going to bring out the strength that you have as an authentic divine being, or it's going to bring out all of the weakness and the junk that the human ego has. And it's It's actually a crossroad. It's a crossroad as to who you're going to choose to be. A lot of us, when we go through the suffering, my dad, use my dad as an example, and my grandfather. My grandfather, when he lost his eyesight, he became very, very gentle. My dad, on the other hand, when he lost his eyesight, became very, very mean, uh, resentful. So it had different effect on him. But the journey of life is filled with crossroads. And if I don't say anything else today, that's what I want to say. And I don't think I'll be on here very long uh, due to the challenges that we have. But the journey of life is filled with crossroads, and our lives are filled with crossroads and choices. Those are choices that have to be made. And I remember yesterday sitting with my sister. We were talking, and she made a comment about how to see the now. A lot of us, and I'm going to go back and reflect on when I had my first experience of knowing oneness. Is when I was standing in the mirror years ago, not long after my early salvation experience. I was standing in the mirror and just messing with my hair or whatever, and my face transfigured. And when it did, I saw a me that I had never seen before. And I know now that it was the Lord, it was the Spirit, it was my own higher self, it was the Christ. Um, and I heard the words, "These are my eyes, your eyes are my eyes, your mouth is my mouth, your ears are my ears," and so forth. And that was the first time I had a glimpse of my authentic self, the authentic self that I am. So when we go through a suffering or a tragedy or a crisis, it's that point where we must choose if we're going to be that higher self or we're going to be that self that is under the weight of that suffering. And so Renee and I were talking yesterday. She said she could tell there's a transition point when a person begins to speak from the pain. And she illustrated it by saying she saw the person bent over, his voice really low, they're barely above a whisper, and could see the actual weight on that person. And then when that shift was made, that transition was made to that higher self, that person began to speak from that higher self, and they straightened up and their voice got strong. They were more positive, all of those things. So there is in each of us a turning point of how to see the now and not find ourselves under the weight of the suffering. I don't know if that makes any sense to any of you, but I wanted to mention it to you. It's an intersection of life direction. Which direction are you going to go in? It's standing at the intersection of that. A choice must be made as to the direction you will take. The crisis will either lead you to an expanded awareness and triumph, or it'll lead you to depression, anger, or bitterness. And I've noticed that, and it's the same thing with people who grew up in the same household. Say all the siblings, they grew up in the same household, but for whatever reason, one sibling may find a path to a more positive lifestyle, while the other will go down and spiral into a dark place, even though they've experienced the same things. but the effect of the things that were experienced caused something else to take place in that one. So there is the conditioning that we have, the conditionings, our life conditionings, and I found a new term for conditioning because I think we've worn it out. It's called learned behavior. So if I've watched those who raised me and how they responded and reacted when they were in trouble or when they were threatened, I saw how they did that. I had a choice to act just like them or to be just the opposite of them. That's so if I do what they've done, how they do, that's learned behavior. Yes. Hey Ollie, how you doing? That's learned behavior. Um, so that one teaches me how I should react and respond. So when I'm in the crossroad or the crisis point, that point of transition, I can either react and respond from my learned behavior, or I can choose to move from my knowing and from that higher self that I am. The tragedy or a crisis also is the birth of a person that you never dreamed you would be. It's the birth of it's the birth of the higher self when you're in the midst of a crisis and you're faced with that thing that is threatening, and you can't wish it away, you can't pray it away, you can't confess it away, you can't affirm it away. You just have to go through it. It's kind of like what Pastor's been through with his back. He's in pain most of the time since the surgery. He can't make the pain go away. Nothing really gets rid of the pain, but he has to move. And so in order to get better, he just has to move through the pain. And knowing that eventually the movement itself is going to be the healing. So it's the learned behavior that causes us to react a certain way when we've watched other people and how they reacted. The triumph is not obtained by removing the problem. And I think a lot of us have been really wanting to move the problem. We want the problem to go away. But it's not the problem that has to go away that gives you the triumph. It's the overcoming the effects of the problem psychologically that gives you the triumph, that causes you to be victorious, I would say. You must overcome the effects of the problem psychologically. And that in itself gives you victory. I remember there was a lady, I can't remember her name, years ago, and it might have been Lori Lamb, maybe. She had a skiing accident that left her paralyzed. I don't remember if she was quadriplegic or just paraplegic, but she was paralyzed and no longer could do the things she used to could do. And she allowed that crisis to be the birth of her higher self. And from that point, after the tragedy, after the accident, she became very inspirational in helping other people instead of sinking into depression and feeling sorry for herself. And so it's overcoming the effects, the psychological effects of the problem that gives you actually that victory, that triumph, when you see your higher self rise up above what's happening and what has happened. And to overcome is to transcend the effects of the problem that it has had on you. I don't know if that makes sense to any of you guys, but that's what I wanted to talk about this morning. Lori, I'm so glad to see you too, sweetheart. I wondered about you. I thought about you last week. It's good to have you here on with us. So you win not when the crisis is removed, but you have when you have confronted all of the fear, anger, hopelessness, and then dare to go on living as though this has never happened. That's when you win. It's not when the crisis is removed, not when the problem is gone, but when you have confronted everything that it's bringing up in you. When you've confronted it and then moved into that place of a higher self and chosen and has chosen to be that best you instead of the you that's under the weight of that burden. So a metamorphosis starts to take place. It begins when you realize that the problem's not going to go away and you've got to work through it. That's when the metamorphosis begins to take place. So this problem can't be prayed away. It can't be confessed away. It can't be visualized away. It has to be transcended. And it's put there deliberately by the Lord of the universe, or I'll say the Lords of karma, to bring you to that place of transition, to bring you to that turning point, and for you to make that choice. It must be transcended. Type that in. It must be transcended. It doesn't have to be removed, but it has to be transcended. And it is normal for there to be periods of sadness and panic during the crisis. It's normal for that to happen. But it's also because an old identity is passing away. The old identity is passing away, and there is a resistance to that passing away. Jill said that. She says, crisis presents itself to diminish the ego. Yes, it does. Maybe every situation, good or bad, is designed for this. Every situation is good and bad designed for that, Jill. Yes, exactly. It must be transcended. It has to be transcended. So our focus has been on getting rid of the problem. But the problem isn't the problem. It's the psychological effects of the problem that is the problem. And so we must transcend the psychological effects that problem has on us. Yes, guys, thank you for typing that in. Thank you for typing it in. Yes, it must be transcended. And like I said, it's normal for you to have periods of sadness or panic, fear, even anger. It's normal for you to have that because that old identity is passing away, and it is the old identity that's kicking up dust. It's the old identity that's acting out. But you can get stuck there now for a while. You can get stuck there in that darkness. And then what helps you is the prayers that others make for you and the prayer that causes you to transcend it and find the strength to come up out of that. So I'm hoping this is making sense to you guys. I hope it's making sense to you. Some people, some of us even pray for death when we're in that kind of a crisis. We want to die, want to get out of it, but that's wanting to escape, to be released from the painful experience, and be released from the crisis. That's just escapism. So that in itself is not a noble thing to say, I'm ready to go, I'm ready to get out of here. That's not a noble thing. That's just escape. That's simply escape. So when we're faced with a problem or crisis, our first reaction is usually our first tendency is to want to escape that. But when it cannot be moved, and because we are all powerful in our being able to change things, but if I cannot change it with my prayers and my affirmations and my visualizations and all of my creative abilities, then that means I must transcend it. I must go through it, and I must overcome the psychological effects of it to the point that it does not cause me to be under a heavy weight and become I'm going to say it like this, become a devilish identity. So that darkness would cause you to become a devilish identity if you get stuck there. This is the turning point, the place where the road divides, where the crossroad, the intersection of life direction takes a different course. The question is, will you go on living as though this tragedy and crisis has never happened, or will you succumb to the grief, the panic, and become bitter? That's the choice. The choice is yours to make. The path is yours to take. If you choose to live and not simply exist, then from the depths of the soul, everything that is needed to live with that problem, it emerges. It comes up. It surfaces once the choice is made that you're going to not just exist, and you're going to take, not going to say control, but you're going to take this situation into your own hands, and you're going to deal with it. All that is needed to live with the problem surfaces. The strength, the determination, the persistence, everything that is needed, it begins to come to the forefront, and you'll begin to have a different way of dealing with it. A new you emerges out of it. What is that? They call it the phoenix, the rise of the phoenix. That's a new you that emerges. One that is empowered to face life's uncertainties and injustices. One that knows who they are, and one that is more confident, more humble, more understanding, more hopeful, more fearless. One that has learned to cherish every moment and not take life for granted. This is what happens when we allow what I call acid grace to take place in us when there is a crisis or a problem that arises. Thank you, Marsha. She said, strength, determination, and persistence. A new you. Yes, a new you is supposed to come up out of the ashes of that problem. A new you is supposed to emerge out of that. And it's the acid grace. And I call it acid grace because it burns away everything that's not you. And it is not a fun place to be. It's not for the egoic identity. It's a terrifying place to be. Some don't go through physical challenges. They go through financial challenges. Some go through family challenges, or they go through the loss of different things, different outcomes, different situations, different lifestyles. The loss itself is the acid grace that's burning away everything that is not you, everything that is not divine, everything that is of the constructed self. It also burns away all of the learned behavior. That's the glory. That's the glory. It burns away all of the learned behavior. So one who has come to love and respect the crossroad, who is not afraid to walk through the shadow of death. That's the key. Not afraid to walk through the shadow of death. You then become the untouchable. There was a show years ago that used to come on called The Untouchables. You become the untouchable when that evil, or I should say, I don't want to say evil, when that energy that seems to be opposing you finds out that it cannot change who you are and what you are, that you will rise above it every time. That then you are the untouchable. So I hope this helps you guys. And yes, Jill, it said choose Christ consciousness. The Antichrist is a mindset that one chooses at a time. It is not a person. Yeah. Yeah. And it can be seen. It can be seen when a person transitions out of that low self, that dark self, into that higher self. It can be actually seen like a person who has multiple personality disorders. There's actually a switch that takes place, a shift. I remember we talk a lot about Catherine Kuhlman and other ministers who have ministered in the realm of miracles and healings and things like that. We've noticed, you know, over time, we've studied, Pastor and I, we've studied how there's a moment when you look at them and you look at them closely, there is a moment when they shift from their human body mind identity into Christ consciousness. There's a moment when they shift, and all of a sudden their countenance changes and their whole demeanor changes, and they become fearless in the face of what other people think is impossible. There's this knowing that it can be moved or it can be done. There is an actual change in countenance when that happens. Actual change in countenance. I remember also watching, I think it was Michael Beckwith some years ago, and I used to watch him on Sunday mornings. I don't do it as much now, but I would watch his programs on Sunday morning. And he told them at one point before they got started in their service, he said, I want you to stand up and I want you to pull your shoulders back, straighten your spine. And when they did that, he said he had them say something. I can't remember what they said, but immediately, a lot of their the presence on a lot of them, all of them actually began to change. And it wasn't because God came in the room. It wasn't because there was this great power that came in the room, but it was because they made a choice. I'm going to shift from this to this. I'm going to shift from this that is under the weight of this burden into this that is the overcomer, this that is the untouchable. They made the shift. You can make that shift too. I won't say it is an easy thing, but when you know that the shift has been made, you begin to, with intention, make that choice to make the shift. And all of the power and strength and wealth of God begins to give you what you need to make that shift. I hope that helps you. I hope that helps you today. Now, Pastor, you want to end up with something to give them?
The word that is causes the overcoming of these infirmities or something that's been imposed upon us unwillingly is the death of the body. Now, you cannot kill the body and kill all the passions. We've tried it, and you know it. You get fasted till you got so skinny you could get in your car without opening the door. But the key to this, when it says in Romans, if ye through the Spirit mortify the deeds of the body, mortify, meaning that the only part of you, if you through the Spirit, your inner self, the Christ self, is the only one you can try, you can transcend it in mind with the ego.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, I got a cabinet full of all different kinds of alcohol drinks. When I was little and when a teenager, I could stand in the kitchen and watch anybody drink and it wouldn't bother me. That's a form of mortification put to death. Now, when they come to my house and they ask me, do I have anything to drink? I can say, yeah. It sits in there over years and I do not touch it. I don't have no desire to drink it. And if it did have a desire, it's not an overwhelming, intense desire to get it. You can confess all you want to that you have died to your sins and died to this, and it always come back. And the reason why is because spirit, your true self, is not involved in it. The only part of your spirit that's involved in it is at this time is called intercession.
Mm.
The spirit prays, not prays, but move. What we call praying all the time is not saying, "Oh Lord, I come to you the most on the way." No, prayer
Right.
in the mystical side is spirit movement inside of us. When Jesus said he would return unto the Father, you see him in the morning, he meant that he was going to go within an awareness already available to himself inside, where he could go where nothing would touch him, even though his body was being crucified.
Mhm.
So the key to this is not you confessing over and over and over, I've overcome, but eventually you're going to do it again. And that's because spirit has not worked in you both the will and the do of that habit being put to death. I'm telling you the way it works. If spirit don't touch it, you'll do it again. If
Mm.
spirit don't touch it, you won't
Mhm.
overcome it.
That's true.
If spirit won't touch it, you won't stop walking around naked. That's the reason why you see all these girls with these patches and these short breeches and all this stuff showing their bodies to men and the shapes. It's because the spirit has not mortified that. When you get saved, some of the things, when you receive the Holy Spirit, everything is not mortified yet because there are some things that in your what you call conditioned self is another word you use for it.
Learned behavior.
Nerve
Your
behavior,
learned behavior.
learned behavior is
Mhm.
something else. You said there was a stronger word than that. Called, it's something in there that needs to be changed. You cannot change it through confession. There are
Mhm.
some people that confess till their tongue done fell out, and every
Mhm.
time you say something to them, they say, "That's not right. You couldn't. You should say it positive."
Well, Pastor, I'm glad you mentioned that because I've also come to understand that those of us who've been in the spiritual community, who've had the opportunity to hear truth and embrace it as as truth of us, there is there's the possibility, always the possibility of the egoic mind structure to take that same truth and incorporate it into its ego structure.
In the
And
mind.
that becomes a spiritualized ego.
Yeah, but
And when there's a spiritualized ego, you can say the right things, do the things that we would consider Christ-like, but it doesn't ring true because it's still coming from one that's trying to be that and the pretender. It is a pretender and it is not the true Christ. And it will see itself as loving, it will see itself as all of those things that is Christ like, but it will be a pretender, it's an imposter, it is a spiritualized ego. And so the grace of God, the acid grace of God, comes and dismantles even that spiritual identity,
it removes the
that spiritual
soul.
identity, because it becomes the spiritual identity has it has a fortress of the truth that protects it.
When I went to get a shot in my hip this week past, I thought that needle was going to hurt. But what was hurting when she put the needle in there to inject for the pain was my mind saying from past experiences, conditioning, learned behavior, that it was going to hurt.
Mm-hmm.
But then when my mind found out that it was not going to hurt,
Mm-hmm.
it was over. It was too late.
Mm-hmm.
One of these days you'll find out, and there's no judgment against you if you haven't come to this point. One of these days you're going to find out, like the Hebrew kids in a fiery furnace, that the pain is an illusion and it does not exist. I'm having pain now because it has not been mortified yet. Frozen, mortify means put on hold, freezing like in the grave.
And you're having to learn to work through the pain.
And the working through the pain is really the pain body conditioning
Yes.
that's working through it. And it thinks that if it can work through it, it'll go. And sometimes it works.
And
But
then,
it don't mean that spirit is directly injected into it.
right. And not only that, when one is in pain, whether it be psychological, mental, financial, or physical, it doesn't matter. When one is in pain, the pain body, which we learned from Eckhart Tolle, the pain body then begins to feed. And when it wants to feed, it will cause more pain. It will do things to cause more pain for itself and for others. And it's almost it's not something that you consciously do, but when you're in pain, it's like the dog who's been run over, and you're trying to help the dog from under the car, and he's biting you and the tire.
Yeah.
Because pain
It hadn't been more.
lashes out
Yeah.
to get more pain.
Now, here's the clue. Here's what prayer really is. And prayer is this: surrender and worship and praise in heaven is not thank you, Lord, praise you, Jesus, and all that. The highest form of prayer in heaven is not choir singing and music playing, even though that'll be it's an indication you hadn't gone far enough. But the highest form of praise in heaven and in the spirit world is your mouth shut, stillness, and sitting there.
Stillness.
Now, even though the mind is working, here's another clue. You may go into your closet and your mind is thinking about this, thinking about that. Don't try and stop it. Let it run its course, because the mind is designed to come to an end. Now, after this teaching in class this morning, you may forget and slip. There will be always something in you that'll judge you and say, you failed, you didn't do it, so ain't no use of doing it anymore. That's another surrender of the mind telling you that the spirit is bringing it to an end because it can't do it itself.
Yes. I want you to type this in. We're going to get ready to end in just a second, but I want you to type this in. History does not have to repeat itself. History does not have to repeat itself. Type that in for me. Okay. So our learned behavior has made us believe that history will repeat itself, but it does not have to.
I'm going to speak this word to everybody that's listening, with or without being seen. A lady went past two people on the expressway. She was nasty. She threw the finger up on the left side, somebody passing her on the left side. No sooner than she threw her finger up, she thought she had it made. But the minute she put her finger down after throwing it up, giving a bad sign, she ran 2 red lights, and a big tractor and trailer hit her and killed her. That was karma. Now listen to this. It may get worse for our country because of our recent new president and all those he's put in position for him. But this is one thing the church, if they have said it, good. If they have not, watch this. I'm telling you what's going to take place. It's called karma. Everything that our president has done to remove people from position, to lose jobs, to hurt the Hispanic, to build that wall, to lock up men, women, and children, and he has not cried a tear or said a smile at it at all. His sons and his even present son, there will come a time when karma will come back and get him. You don't do people wrong and not pay for it.
Exactly.
He will pay for every judgment and every speech that he says he's going to shut down this government, put this person, Elon Musk, I call his name. He will also go through karma. So In the meantime, there will be a lot of people dying, a lot of children dying, even the war of Israel dying, and people dying from all those countries. If you've done it unto the least of them, you've done it unto him. There will be a time when karma, even Judas in karma, went out and hung himself. Nebuchadnezzar, when he burned the Hebrew children, he created karma by turning into a crawling beast on his knees. They're not getting by.
No one's getting by.
And so I know you're looking at the news, talking to them about they shouldn't do this and do that. I done found out that that is your monkey mind. They don't hear you. They can't hear anything else but their rich mind. They don't understand that there's an agenda that's taking place in the earth, and it's going to come back and get every last one of them in karma. I hope you catch that. But in the meantime, only thing we can do is allow spirit to mortify these thoughts and these deeds that we're dealing with in the present moment. That's the reason why I spend a lot of time in the closet, because when I go in there, all my senses shut down physically. Even though my mind is thinking, it gives space for spirit to crucify some of those feelings. And pretty soon, when you go in the closet and come out, you'll feel like you're still in there. That's what Jesus meant when he said, I go to the Father and you see me no more. When he said, it's the Father that do this and work hitherto, he was saying the miracles that was done by him, if he did or didn't do them, was from the higher self.
So this is the thing I want to end with. All of that the pastor said is absolutely true, but I want to end this with a positive note that the shift that you make personally changes what happens outside. It changes the world. If in your own personal world you're at war, there's going to be war everywhere else. So the way to end the wars, the way to end the strife, is to end it inside yourself. End it inside of yourself by realizing
you can't change it on your own.
You can't change it on your own.
On your own reconnaissance.
But you can make a choice.
That's as far as you can go.
And the choice has to be made.
I don't like this. I don't want to be like this. And Spirit says, you're now giving me the authority to change it.
Yes, yes. So the shift, the transition, remembering and I'm asking the Holy Spirit to bring to our remembrance who we are.
Before we came here.
When I say that, I mean, at the moment that you're in the crisis, when everything's flared up, when all of the emotions are flared and the anger and the bitterness or whatever is there, at that moment, I'm asking for the Spirit of God to intervene and bring the remembrance of whatever, bring the remembrance of your true self back to you. And I think there's a scripture that talks about reminding us, and I can't remember exactly what it reminds, to bring to remembrance the things that are true of you. So in the midst of the crisis, there is a shift that will be made when you make the choice. And that remembrance is the responsibility of the Spirit of God, who is the memory of God inside of you.
And Spirit will give you signs and indications. And you can catch these indications in the small, still voice or the small inner witness. There was a lady that came here that no one else, maybe one may have done it, that came to my house and sat down on the floor and gave us $1,000 to help keep going. Nobody else in the room did that but her. If there were somebody down there, I don't remember it, but all I know, my wife was there with her, and she may have been on the floor with him, maybe not. I don't remember. But this is a sign that God is seated at the right hand of the Father on the inside of you, making sure that all those mortifications take place to move the speed bumps out of the way so you can see the manifestations of the blessings.
Making sure that the new you emerges from the problem, from the situation. So this we're going to take off here, and preferably we'll be back on Tuesday, Lord willing, and nothing happens. My computer's acting crazy, doing some crazy things. It started doing it on yesterday, but so you may see me moving things around a little bit. But I wanted to remind you to give. I know it's easy to watch a video and not give anything. It's easy to just click on, click off. But if you would, I appreciate your giving. You can do that by going to Cornerstone website, and it's the Cornerstone Life Center, and hitting the donate button. It's just as simple as that. And we want to thank you for giving your tithes and your offerings to Cornerstone, because that gives us a chance to tithe from your tithe, to give to Crisis Control. And you know, this season is a lot of people who have had hardships from the hurricanes and all other things. And so this season is very important that we remember people who are still in need, and not just focus on ourselves and getting gifts and giving gifts to our families. It's important that you think a little bit broader than what you would have. I want to read just a little bit of this letter that we got from Crisis Control, because we give every month to Crisis Control from your tithes and your offerings. It said, once again, you made a financial gift to assist your neighbors in crisis. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you for helping neighbors in Forsyth and Stokes counties receive emergency assistance. You are sharing hope with our neighbors in crisis. And she gives an example of a young lady. He says, Dashika came to Crisis Control Ministry for help with her rent. She was overwhelmed and needed support. Dashika's life had changed dramatically in recent months. She had accepted custody of her 8-year-old granddaughter, and her son was a victim of a violent attack at college and returned home to recover from his injuries. On top of the stress of changing a changing family situation, her employer decreased her hours due to supply chain issues. Crisis Control Ministry was able to help Dashika with her rent payment and offered her more than just financial assistance. We provided her with compassion, kindness, and reassurance. So when you give to Cornerstone and we give to Crisis Control or other charitable organizations,
this is the tithes of the ministry and the church.
Yes, this helps other people. And so I wanted to say this to you. When you do give, if you give to someone who is just a taker and never giving out, then your gift stops there. But when you give to a giver, your gift continues, it grows, and the currency, and that's what money is. It's currency. It has to flow. It has to move. So when you give to a giver, your flow increases. So as it flows out, it begins to flow back in. So I want to encourage you to give your tithes and offerings. I know sometimes that's a sacrifice. Believe me, I know that, because there are times when it's very lean financially, it's lean, but to give your tithes and your offerings will keep that flow going, and you'll be surprised how God will intervene and bring the miracle of financial wealth to you by your giving, just by your giving. And if you don't got money, give whatever you got. Give whatever you got.
When you stand in the mirror and say, everything wealthy, prosperous, joy, and strength has now taken possession of you.
Yes.
It is now take possession. Wealth is taking possession of you. You're talking to the Christ, and he will come forward to give you a sign that you have said what he wanted to hear from inside himself.
So we're thanking you for all of your tithes and offerings before you even give it. We thank you for that. I wanted to mention one other thing for you guys too. I know some of you love to send us cash gifts and cash from Cash App. We accept that. We thank you so much. If in the event you want to send something through the mail, please do not send cash in an envelope.
Right.
This time of year, those cash,
Very sensitive.
there's people who are opening those envelopes.
That's right.
Do not send cash money in an envelope.
That's
If
right.
you can find another way to do it, then find another way to do it. We appreciate you giving, but do not do that, because we don't want your money to be taken, and it can be taken at this time of the year, anytime really, but this time
People
particularly.
are desperate now.
Yes, so that's not a good practice to do. So please don't do that. If you can help it, don't do that. And if you're going to do that, then you have to drive to our mailbox and drop it off. That's the only way, because if it goes through,
Can I give an address?
no, if that goes through that changes the hands of postal workers and other people who are involved, in that cash may grow legs. So anyway, just wanted to mention that, okay? And I love you. We thank you so much. I want you to have a beautiful Sunday afternoon. Here in the Carolinas, the weather's going to be nice today. I think I'll do a little yard work.
That's the old song we used to sing long years ago, and it goes like this: shake a leg, shake a leg. Shake a leg if you can.
Now, where did that come from?
That was an old
Shake a leg, shake a leg.
A song called Shake a Leg.
Okay, shake a leg, guys. So we're going to see you on Tuesday at 7. All right? We love you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.